We begin tonight with day 5 of the January 6th committee hearings. Today's hearings focused on former President Trump's efforts to influence the Justice Department over the 2020 election results. We heard from 3 Justice Department officials who were in charge in the final days of the Trump presidency and on the day of the Capitol riot. Former Acting Attorney General Jeffrey Rosen testified. He was almost replaced by Mr. Trump just days before the Capitol riot with a department official who championed election fraud claims. The former acting Deputy Attorney General Richard Donahue and Stephen Engel, who led the DOJ's Office of Legal Counsel, also testified. Here's Rosen on the president's push to influence the department.
A common element of all of this was the president expressing his dissatisfaction that the Justice Department, in his view, had not done enough to investigate election fraud.
Jeff Clark was proposing that Jeff Rosen be replaced by Jeff Clark. And I thought the proposal was asinine.
I do recall saying to people that somebody should be put in charge of the Justice Department who isn't frightened of what's going to be done to their reputation.
I felt in that conversation that was incumbent on me to make it very clear to the president what our investigations had revealed, and that we had concluded, based on actual investigations, actual witness interviews, actual reviews of documents, that these allegations simply had no merit.
As I alluded to earlier, the issue really wasn't about me. It would have been fine, as I said, to have had Rich Donahue replace me. I would have said, great, I get 17 days vacation or something. But the issue was the use of the Justice Department. And it's just so important that the Justice Department adhere to the facts and the law.
So for more on this, let's bring in Robert Costa and Siobhan Hughes. Robert is CBS News chief election and campaign correspondent, and Siobhan covers Capitol Hill for the Wall Street Journal. Thank you both for being here on this big day. Bob, I want to start with you. Since you've been covering every minute of these hearings, it was striking to hear from 3 members of the Justice Department, all of whom served in the Trump administration, under oath, testifying about this pressure campaign from the then president to have them essentially meddle in the 2020 election results. What was the biggest takeaway that you learned from today's testimony?
The big takeaway was that big moment, January 3rd, 2021, the culmination of Trump's pressure campaign on the Justice Department. In the Oval Office, several Department of Justice officials telling the president that he will face mass resignations if he continues to lean on the Justice Department and try to get them to buy into his false claims about the election, to sign a letter and send a letter to Georgia, to call a special session to try to send so-called alternate electors to Washington to be counted on January 6th. What we see is that January 3rd meeting really put into motion in a new way what happened just days later on January 6th. It was a trigger scene in American history because just a day later on January 4th, Trump starts to focus again on Vice President Pence, brings John Eastman, the conservative lawyer, into the Oval Office and says, now it's your turn, Pence, to do what I want.
Amazing how many people he was trying to go to overturn this election and meddle with the results. Siobhan, another thing that I found striking about today's testimony was that we heard about 3 Republican congressmen seeking these blanket pardons. What did you make of that?
Well, I can tell you that I just interacted with one of those Republicans, Mo Brooks, and he said, yes, he did in fact seek a blanket pardon. It was on behalf of people who had formally objected to the results from Arizona and Pennsylvania, and it was based on the grounds that from his perspective, the Democrats would attempt to politicize their involvement should they ultimately remain in control. What I made of it, though, the big takeaway for me was that you're hearing this in large part from an aide to Mark Meadows, the former White House chief of staff, also former chairman of the House Freedom Caucus. And so this is somebody who would be deeply inside that knot of House Republicans. It shows the risk that a lot of information about what they were doing has been exposed to that select committee. And it's really an X marks the spot. The committee is telegraphing that there's more to see here.
And Bob, I want you to weigh in here as well. What did you make about the news of all of those seeking pardons?
I believe at last count there were at least 5 House Republicans who were seeking pardons in the final days of the Trump presidency. And this is a really critical piece of information because we're continuing to learn about how so many lawmakers inside the Republican Party touched this episode in American democracy in a way we didn't previously understand until we heard this testimony under oath, often from Republican witnesses. Just a few days ago, we heard about Senator Ron Johnson passing on information about false electors to the vice president's staff, then Vice President Pence's staff. Now we're learning about the seeking of pardons by members of the House GOP. And this is not something that's just isolated in the past. The House Republican Conference is now poised, should they do well this fall, to hold power in Congress next year and to have enormous power. And the Senate Republicans the same, should they do well in the midterm elections this fall. So the people who are involved are still active, vital participants in our political scene, which makes this entire committee and what it's unveiling consequential, both constitutionally, legally, and politically.
That's a really good point, and especially how much we're learning, a year and a half after that Capitol attack and why it's so important. I mean, we also heard, of course, from Richard Donahue, who was then the acting Deputy Attorney General. He talked about then President Trump essentially wanting to clean house and install his own man as head of the Justice Department to do his bidding, essentially. Let's listen to what he had to say, how he described it.
Toward the end of the meeting, the president again was getting very agitated, and he said, people tell me I should just get rid of both of you. I should just remove you and make a change in the leadership, put Jeff Clark in, maybe something will finally get done. And I responded, as I think I had earlier in the December 27th call, Mr. President, you should have the leadership that you want, but understand, the United States Justice Department functions on facts, evidence, and law. And those are not going to change. So you can have whatever leadership you want, but the department's position is not going to change.
So, Bob, Jeffrey Clark, of course, was not in the room today, but he was the key figure of today. Can you kind of remind us why he is so significant in all of this, particularly today?
Well, particularly today, because it was only yesterday, on Wednesday, that Mr. Clark's home was raided by federal investigators in Virginia. And he is now part of this investigation, not just at the congressional level, but at the Justice Department level. And he's a player now in what's happening at the DOJ. We know they were going after members of the Proud Boys and others for sedition charges. Now we're also learning there's a major front at the Justice Department investigating fake electors who participated in this scheme, who was involved. And Jeffrey Clark is someone who was pressuring Georgia. The governor of Georgia, Brian Kemp, the legislature of Georgia wanted to send this letter, was working with President Trump to do that. He is now seeing his electronic devices, his documents being seized by federal investigators. So he was a key part of what was happening in early 2021, but he's also a key part of what's happening now with the Justice Department investigation of January 6th and related events.
Yeah, amazing news this morning. Siobhan, also, Jeffrey Clark was essentially going rogue. I mean, he went behind his colleague's back to go to the White House. Then acting Attorney General Rosen talked a little bit about his interaction with Clark. Take a listen.
Unbeknownst to him, he was asked to go to a meeting, and he didn't know it, but it turned out it was at the Oval. He found himself at the Oval Office. And he was apologetic for that. And I said, well, you didn't tell me about it. It wasn't authorized. And you didn't even tell me after the fact. This is not appropriate.
So, Siobhan, I'm curious what you make of this. I mean, it was striking to hear from these Justice Department officials describing these actions that Clark was taking and the way that they were, describing him as this environmental lawyer guy, essentially.
We learned a couple of things today, too. Number one, how underhanded this was, because we heard, and we didn't see it, but we heard that Pat Cipollone, the former White House counsel, had testified that before that meeting, he told Jeffrey Clark it would not be a good idea to go into that meeting. It was basically a violation of policy, of code. And so it appears that Jeffrey Clark was not that forthright when he told Mr. Rosen that this meeting sort of was happenstance and he really had no idea it was going to be a problem. Number two, to bring it back full circle, let's also not forget that we know the person who introduced Jeffrey Clark to President Trump was Scott Perry, one of the lawmakers on that list of people allegedly seeking a pardon. Now, Mr. Perry has denied that. He's called that a soulless lie. But we're not only now in the realm of the Justice Department officials being in trouble, but you can see the microscope honing closer and closer in on this group of House Republicans, particularly the ones who were in that White House meeting on December 21st, the House Freedom Caucus folks with President Trump, where after that meeting, Scott Perry did have that formal introduction to the president.
And Bob, I want to play a little more from Donahue because he had some striking testimony later on in the hearing. Take a listen.
I thought it was useful to point out to the president that Jeff Clark simply didn't have the skills, the ability, and the experience to run the department. And so I said, Mr. President, you're talking about putting a man in that seat who has never tried a criminal case, who's never conducted a criminal investigation. He's telling you that he's going to take charge of the department, 115,000 employees, including the entire FBI, and turn the place on a dime and conduct nationwide criminal investigations that will produce results in a matter of days. It's impossible, it's absurd, it's not going to happen, and it's going to fail.
So, Bob, how surprising is this in light of so many revelations today?
It's not surprising in the terms of understanding former President Trump's conduct over the course of his presidency, testing the bounds of presidential power. But it's surprising that the United States came to this moment where it was almost a repeat of history of what happened during Watergate when President Richard Nixon was so frustrated with the special prosecutor, they had what we now call the Saturday Night Massacre, where he rifled through and different Department of Justice officials to try to make sure that special prosecutor got fired. And now we're seeing, decades later, another testing of American democracy, but specifically of the Justice Department by someone who holds the enormous power of the presidency in his hands.
Especially 50 years after Watergate. That's a good note to end on. Robert Costa and Siobhan Hughes, thank you so much for your reporting on this big news day. And we have more hearings to come next month. Appreciate your time.